What's going on, cool betters? It's another PGA major, meaning it's another Coolbet Canada betting preview show. I'm Pat Gregoire, joined as always with Andrew Hustler Paterson, and this time we're sending things down to Torrey Pines for the U.S. Open. Let's get Huss right into here. How you doing? I know you're pumped for this tournament. We were talking off air quickly saying, every tournament when it comes to the majors are always big, but this one just feels like there's something special this year, doesn't it?
Pat, great to talk to you, dude. This is the monster. Torrey Pines, U.S. Open, USGA conditions, the biggest and most difficult test in golf with one of the best fields in golf. And, man, considering the season we've already had, Hideki at the Masters, Phil writing the incredible story at the PGA Championship. The bar has been set very high for PGA Tour action this year, but I got to tell you, the storylines and the intrigue and drama heading into this tournament are setting up to be a great one. I cannot wait for tee off on Thursday morning, dude.
Absolutely. You mentioned the storylines. There's a ton of storylines. We'll get into those quickly before we get into our bets. But before we even do that, we have a chance for you, the viewers at home, to get in on the action, get in on the winning. So if you share this tweet, whether it be a retweet, a quote tweet, or you share this on Facebook, or even share our YouTube link as well, which we are live right now at Coolbet Canada on our channel. You do any of that, and your name will be entered into a draw for a $75 Coolbet bonus. You can use that on a future bet for maybe one of our picks here. You can use it on Euro 2020, which is going on right now, NBA, NHL playoffs. The list goes on and on. So your choice, however you want to use that $75. So, Huss, like you said, lots of storylines coming into this thing. I think one of the big ones right now, Jon Rahm, the heavy favorite in this tournament right now. And I think a lot of it has to do with also not only his great form, but we saw him last week have a victory just ripped right out of his hands. So do you think right now, as a bettor, there's enough value on Jon Rahm right now?
To be honest, no, not at 11-1. I mean, I have a hard time. I have time for Jon Rahm being the favorite. But, I mean, as we sit here, Pat, and there's been a couple of movements, but there's still a massive gap between DJ, who's the second-ranked player by odds at 17-1, and Jon Rahm at 11-1. I mean, I've got time for Jon Rahm as the favorite, as I mentioned. But then when you add in, the emotions of what happened to him at the Memorial, the fact that he has been in quarantine up until today. Now, that being said, he was probably quarantining at like the Callaway Golf Facility or something in Southern California. So I'm sure he's been hitting balls and preparing for the tournament. But listen, it's an abnormal situation. And I would have thought that those numbers would have been far closer. To me, you've got that elite group right there of Rahm, DJ, Bryson, Brooks Koepka, Rory McIlroy, and we should probably include Xander Schauffele because he'll be a big part of this story. Southern California kid. He's been so close in majors before. Many people think that this is his time coming back home to Torrey Pines. But the Rahm story is fascinating, Pat. And I mean, I expect him to be good, but I think a lot of people are expecting us to just rip back to 2 weeks ago and have Jon Rahm steamrolling the rest of the field. And considering this course, the conditions, and the other players that are in the field, I'm not sure that that's happening.
Yeah, I know the course conditions, the rough, that's going to be talked at nauseum. So that's going to be one of the storylines. But another storyline that has been going on in golf for a long time, I've absolutely loved it. But it's going to continue. It's Brooksy, a.k.a. Bryson DeChambeau, against Brooks Koepka, and we almost apparently had them grouped together, but we're not going to. But you think there's a chance that maybe come Saturday or Sunday we might see these two guys paired because they're in contention and they might be one of the last groups?
Listen, the last week, every one of my buddies we've been talking about golf with said US Open, give the people what they want. Sunday afternoon, tournament on the line, and a final grouping of Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau. Listen, that wouldn't get Tiger numbers, but I'll tell you what, it would be damn close. I mean, there is a lot of intrigue into this. And hey, you know what? When the PGA Tour put that 40 mil out on the table for people engaging on social media, I'm not sure this was exactly what they had in mind. But I'll tell you what, a lot of people have been talking about it. Now, listen, I think that this is a complete mismatch. I mean, Brooks Koepka is a troll. He is a guy that knows what he's doing on social media. He's got a pretty sly sense of humor. Well, DeChambeau is just, he's out of his league going up in this sort of a competition against Brooks, if you will. And listen, as far as public, there's a lot of people that like both guys, a lot of people that hate both guys, to be honest, which is actually kind of one of the funny side stories about it. But the bottom line is we're going to keep talking about it because Brooks Koepka's got 2 U.S. Opens. Bryson's the defending champion. We're going to need big hitters that are strong to get these balls out of the rough. They're right at the top of that list. So, Pat, it's not at all out of the realm of possibility that this storyline could be front and center on the weekend, although we didn't get it in rounds on the Thursday and Friday rounds. But to be honest, as much as I want to see it, I want to see it happen naturally because they're both in contention on the weekend. That's the way it should be. And if we get it, that's how it'll happen.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I feel like if you put them together, you're kind of forcing it at that point. And wouldn't you rather want to see those guys in the pressure situations, going off on each other? You're going to, like you said, both are such polarizing players on tour. The fans are going to be involved as well. So I think you'd probably lose a little bit of the luster if you had them playing on Thursday and Friday. But with that being said, I still would have taken it. I absolutely would have taken it. I think Coolbet would have taken it because I think there would be a lot of side bets on some of the extracurriculars.
I'll say what, if that happened, the head-to-head bets, and I'm not sure, you'd be better to say than me about how much action the book takes on the head-to-heads as far as outrights and top 10s and top 15s. That would be the most bet head-to-head for an opening round of any golf tournament ever, I think.
Hands down. And actually right now at Coolbet Canada, you can place a wager on Brooks against Bryson. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of action on that tournament head-to-head. But you're right. If those two were facing off on Saturday and Sunday, that would be, I think, some record-breaking numbers. And I think you bring in maybe the, not so traditional golf bettors as well. And that's what all this is about, right? Growing the game. You mentioned, that 40 million bonus. Well, Brooks obviously doing a great job with something like this. He's playing Dave Portnoy left-handed, which is creating some animosity there as well and some traction. So there's a few guys here that realize there's some extra money to be made, and I think they're going to lean into it. And I think these are two guys that are certainly doing it. Now, I'm not saying it's fabricated, because I do think these two guys strongly dislike each other, but I think they're leaning into it and trying to get their names out and get those clicks a little more as well.
Well, listen, they are absolutely, but I will say a lot of people in golf, I think, felt that Brooks really did cross the line with his social media post awarding the people that got kicked out of the tournament harassing DeChambeau, calling him Brooksy. Yeah. Said, "Oh, your afternoon get cut short. Let's take care of that with a case of Michelob Ultra." They sent out a bunch of Ultra. It's interesting that the sponsor got involved in that too, to be honest. Yeah. But listen, I mean, no one got hurt, and we're now talking about it heading into the weekend. But listen, as much as we could focus it on Brooks and Bryson, they'll be two of this front and central figures. You mentioned John Rahm. Dustin Johnson's certainly there. It's sort of funny. We haven't talked as much about DJ, and for a guy that's won on tour, has the history, the major championships, it's crazy how little people are talking about Rory McIlroy, Pat.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of really good value out there. The field is absolutely loaded. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into our outright winner. So Huss, as always, we're going to start with you, and let's let the folks at home know who you are sprinkling down some money for the outright winners at Torrey Pines.
All right. So going with the outright, so many different options. I mean, to me, I really do think that we're going to get a winner from that elite group, sort of in the top 10, 15 bettors. This course, this makeup, this degree of difficulty, the length, really eliminates a lot of players from realistically contending for the championship. And, listen, I can make an argument about all 5 of these guys, and, it wouldn't shock me if they won. But going to a couple of things: prior history at the U.S. Open, a killer instinct, and a guy that sometimes needs to push some of his own buttons to get the chip on his shoulder, even enlarging for these big events. And that is Brooks Koepka. And I know a lot of people are, sort of down on Brooks. He's been hurt, the way that he's playing. Listen, I think that all that does is give us incredible value on Brooks Koepka for a guy that lives for this tournament and these big moments. You add in all the BS with him and DeChambeau around this. I mean, he is literally bringing the pressure and the spotlight on himself. And we've seen in the past that Brooks Koepka thrives on that and can rise to the occasion. So, listen, at 19 to 1, which I locked in, I do see there's a little bit more love for Brooks today. We've seen the number trickle back down to 18 to 1. I really do think we'll see Brooks contending on Sunday, because frankly, that's what he does in major championships, and especially that's what he does in the U.S. Open. So listen, Brooks is my guy at the top of that list. However, the guy that I want to win the most, that I feel it is time, is my guy, Tony Finau. And listen, Pat, I won't go through all of the numbers, but we've been talking for years about how Tony Finau, best guy that doesn't win, top 10 Tony, top 5 Tony, when is he going to get it done? And listen, I know there'll be a lot of Tony on top 5 and top 10 bets for this weekend, but you look at what he did earlier at the Farmers Insurance, coming second, and his record against the field at Torrey Pines since 2015, he is first in 5 or 6 of the most important scoring categories amongst everybody at this golf course. We know Tony Finau has the length. We know Tony Finau has the strength, and he's shown the short game and the ability to get hot with the putter at times to really make him a contender. Now, he needs to put it all together for 72 holes, better than anyone else, and we still haven't seen him get over that hump. But, considering what he's been through, the journey, this would be the perfect way for Tony not only to get in a win, but get a major championship at 27 to 1. I know for Tony bettors like myself, there's a lot of scar tissue from some of these events beforehand.
Oh, yeah.
It'll all be worth it if he can get it done at this tournament. And I got to tell you, I've got a quiet confidence, despite all the heartbreak in the past for Tony Finau, that this could very well be the weekend that he gets it done. Tony Finau is on the card at 27 to 1. Now, listen, as I said, I really do think that the winner of this tournament is probably going to come within the 30-1 or lower range, but it's the U.S. Open, and we have to toss a couple sprinkles on some long shots. So how about former U.S. Open champion Gary Woodland? Woodland has had an up and down season. He missed a bunch of cuts. He's had a few good rounds, but ever since he won the U.S. Open, this is his tournament. I think coming back on the West Coast is going to be big for Gary. And especially if things do get windy, I mean, he's got some of the low ball flight stingers as well as anybody in the game. Listen, I really do think it's going to come down, though, if Gary Woodland can contend, can his short game and the scrambling. Because here's the thing, Pat, and we'll talk about this more. This course is such a beast. You can drive it well. You can hit great irons. You're still going to miss some greens. You're still going to be in the heavy rough. You're still going to need to be getting it up and down. So to me, that is going to determine it. The ball striking of enough for Gary Woodland, I'm confident with that. But listen, if you want to contend and win another U.S. Open, it'll have to be there. And that to me is the question. But I'll tell you what, at 89-1, I don't mind Gary Woodland at that number, and a similar number for Mark Leishman. And you know what? Leish has been good in California at times before. He's got a very strong major championship record of contending, being up there with the big boys. And he's done well at Torrey in the past, and has just won along with Cam Smith, and I'll talk about him in a little bit over at the Zurich earlier this year. So, looking at guys that have the makeup to hang with the big boys, first of all, you need to check that off. Both of these guys do. So at 89-1, the Aussie Mark Leishman, who has been playing quite well, for another dark horse if you want some long bomb sprinkles. But the two guys I like the most, the big bets that I'll be placing, Brooks Koepka and Tony Finau to get it done at Torrey Pines.
Huss, I absolutely love it because I also have Brooks Koepka on my
That's
card.
wild because you know what? A lot of people, I mean, listen, there's tons of DJ out there. Obviously, Rom. We've heard a lot about Bryson DeChambeau, but this is wild. I did not expect us to both be on Brooks, but I got to tell you, I love it. Let's get it done, Pat.
I love it. And I know you're a big Brooks guy. I'm a big Brooks guy as well. And this is his tournament. I mean, only 4 golfers, Tiger Woods, Hale Irwin, Ben Hogan, and Jack Nicklaus, have more U.S. Opens than Koepka does since World War II. So, I mean, he's in pretty good company there. You mentioned it. I don't need to go in it too much more. When the lights shine brightest, that's when Brooks Koepka plays the best. Mails in all the other tournaments, but when it comes to majors, especially the U.S. Open, that's when he plays his best. And I just love the value as well at 19-1. As you said, it's starting to drop down more. I think that he is slowly getting more healthy, and you know what? He just fits this course perfectly. And not even just U.S. Opens, majors itself. This is insane to hear. So in his 28 major appearances, he has 11 top 5 finishes, 14 top 10 finishes. Half the time he tees it up in a major, he ends up in the top 10. That is just absolutely ridiculous. So I think he's going to be in contention. I think he's going to be, come Sunday, he's going to be in contention. And he's a cold-blooded killer. I absolutely love that play there. Another guy I like as well, a winner, a major winner as well. That's Colin Morikawa at 25-1. Right now, in the last whatever months you look at, or how many past tournaments you look at it, he is the best tee to green player in the game right now. He's an absolute fairway finder. When he gets a wedge or an iron in his hand, he makes magic happen. The one thing that does scare me is the putting, but at 25-1, he has an opportunity to really launch his career onto a trajectory to some of the greatest in the game, winning 2 majors in his first 50 PGA events. So I like Morikawa at 25-1. I like how his game lends to Torrey Pines as well. And I think that another guy who hasn't had a major victory yet, but has a very similar skill set, is Victor Hovland. And his odds are just a little bit better than him at 29-1. He's played well at Torrey Pines actually earlier this year. It was the North Course, but it's still Torrey Pines. In January at the Farmers Classic, he finished top 2. And he's had a lot of great finishes in his U.S. Opens as well. Finished 12th and 13 in his first 2 U.S. Opens. He's one of the best ball strikers. He finds the greens well. He can scramble well as well. The putting, again, similar to Morikawa, it's a little bit hot and cold. I trust his putting a little more than Morikawa because when it does heat up, he's lights out. So I really like him at 29-1. And this one here is slowly becoming a principal bet for me because if I miss out on the Canuck, Corey Connors at 79-1, I don't know how I'm going to live with myself. And his form hasn't been great as of late. But what we've seen overall from his body of work this season, we are seeing a budding star on the PGA Tour. He finished in the top 20 at the PGA Championship. He finished in the top 10 at the Masters. So we know he's not going to be afraid of the bright lights of a major tournament. He's not a big bomber by any stretch of the imagination, although he hits it a little bit longer than a lot of people think off the tee, but he is so consistent in finding the fairway, which you said is going to be so key. And I think his skill set fits perfectly to this course, except for now, I looking at my card, I have 3 guys that if the putter's not going, they are absolutely in trouble. But with that being said, I think if he is able to find the putter, at 79-1, similar to your couple bets there, why not? It's just a little sprinkle here, but I do think that we're going to see a good round, a couple rounds of golf from Corey Connors to at least get him into contention come Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, the bottom line is it doesn't matter. I mean, Brooks Koepka, John Rahm, Bryson DeChambeau. I mean, if you're not putting, you're not winning the U.S. Open. And I mean, we're talking about outrights here. So. I mean, we're picking guys that have the upside to beat everybody else. I mean, listen, second is the same as missing the cut. So when we're talking about outright bets, so, we're swinging for the fences here, trying to get guys that can win and can get it done. And listen, we've talked about Koepka and Morikawa. Love Victor Hovland pick. It seems that he is just on the verge of a massive breakout. And this is the sort of course and the sort of field that, it sounds like he could do it. And Corey Connors is interesting. I'll talk a little bit more about the Canadians on a prop bet a little bit later on because we do have 4 in the field. Yes. And there's an interesting name I want to get to a little bit later on.
Absolutely. So there's a little tease there. So if you are still watching, make sure you stay because there are some exotics coming up. But before we get to the exotics, we have to continue with our tops. So let's get into the top 5. Huss, I know a lot of the time your outrights, usually you'll sprinkle a little bit on the top 5, but do you see maybe some value who you don't really trust in outright winning, but you expect for them to at least come Sunday be on that top board there?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a guy that I have both from, we'll go right to it. Cam Smith, 8-1. We'll talk about Cam a little bit more. Listen, this is a tournament where I expect an American or European to win. I mean, if you look at the odds right now, you have to go all the way down to Hideki Matsuyama past about 15 guys to get to the first rest of the world player. And then Cam Smith is right in the mix. So make no mistake about it. The odds are that, one of the Ryder Cuppers are going to be winning this. But listen, Cam Smith has proven that he can contend with all of the top dogs on the PGA Tour right now. He's become a lot more consistent. He's been there, and his record in majors has been impeccable. It doesn't matter whether it's the PGA Championship, Augusta, this tournament last year, Cam Smith has been in the mix, and he has established himself as a guy that's ready to break out. Now, as I said, I did not tab him for an outright. You can only touch that for so many players. And right now he's at 59-1. And I could make an argument that there's some good value with that.
Absolutely.
But I love Cam Smith to be sniffing in and around the top 5 at 8-1 for the tournament as well. And we'll talk about that rest of world bet a little bit later on as we get into some of the exotics. So Cam Smith at 8-1. And listen, I didn't include this. I probably should have. Listen, I'm rolling with Tony Finau to win the tournament, but I'm not dumb enough not to have a little sprinkle on him to not win, but be in the top 5 and the top 10. Top 10 or top 5 Tony, 5-1, and top 10 Tony, plus 210. As I said, mentioned that, but I wanted to focus in on Cam Smith because, his style of play, the skill set he brings, and his history as contending in major after major tells me he's a nice bet at 8-1 to be there on Sunday afternoon and at least crack the top 5 in the tournament, Pat.
Absolutely. And I mean, Cam Smith's your guy. You've been on this guy for a very long time, so you got to have a little bit of a sprinkle there. And at 8-1, I was actually pretty surprised that was his number for the top five when you sent along. Even his outright numbers, I was a little bit surprised. So you were on the train a little bit earlier. Maybe some other people might be hopping on again if he has another solid showing at a major. So you mentioned one of the guys that I have on my card for top five a little earlier in Xander Schauffele and then Brooks Koepka. We already talked about it, about all his finishes in the majors. But for Schauffele, for me, I wanted to have one guy that I didn't have an outright as well. So Schauffele, he's another guy that's played well at Torrey Pines in his career. Like Hovland, he was tied in that Group 4 T2 in January at the Farmers. And he has 4 straight top 10s at the U.S. Open. And he has 4 top 5s this season. And he currently ranks 3rd in PGA Tour average scoring. So I think his game really fits really well for this course. I kind of wanted to sprinkle a little bit on the outright for him, but like you can't just bet the entire board. That's just not a good winning formula. So I figured I can get some value here at plus 450 for him to finish in the top 5. I think he's knocking at the door. And I don't know if this is, the tournament that he finally does get it done at a major, but I think he will certainly be in contention and on that first leaderboard come Sunday.
Oh, yeah. Listen, if Xander Schauffele's not there on Sunday, at least in the mix, I think it'll be a huge disappointment. Now, listen, there is going to be a lot of pressure on him being back home. There'll be tons of friends and family out there pulling on. And, we know the disappointments he's had before, but yeah, I can't argue with that. I mean, I expect Xander to be in the mix. And just a quick note on Brooks. It is interesting. We talked about the comparison amongst that big 5 or 6 at the top of the board. The one thing that sticks out about Koepka is that his placing numbers are bigger than everyone else. And I think there is, whether it's the injury or just Brooks's nature, if things go poorly, maybe things can get away on him. Not entirely sure why, but if you look at, for instance, DeChambeau and Bryson, both are same 18-1. Well, top 5, Bryson's plus 350, Brooks is plus 450. Top 10, Bryson's 165, Brooks is 215. And top 20, Bryson's minus 133. Brooks is even money. So even if you're not on Brooks to win the tournament, if you do think that he'll be there on Sunday, definitely better value on Brooks on those top 5, top 10, and top 20 numbers than you have on the other guys in that group. And you'd have to think that is directly related to the questions around how far he's come back from his knee injury.
It's a very good note, folks. That's why you tune into this show here. You get all the insider, the sharp. I know Chris Abbott hates that word, the sharp plays, but hey, that's what we're here to do. And obviously have some fun as well. But if you here are watching, you're obviously here for some entertainment, here for some hot picks, some hot tips, but you're also here for a chance to win. So again, retweet, like, share, whatever you want to do for this stream. Let's get this out there, and you will have a chance to win $75 in Coolbet. Bonus money, as I mentioned earlier, doesn't have to be for the U.S. Open. It can be for anything, all the things going on in sports right now.
Or you can put it all on Tony Finau. Or
do that. Or just flush her right down. That works too. But let's go on to we just finished up on. Let's go with your hustler, with your top 10s.
All right. These are a couple names that I have not mentioned yet. And, again, Pat, as we talked about, you can really focus in on 2 or 3 guys like we've talked about so far at the top of the list. But, with all the offerings that Coolbet has, it's fun to, get some action on a few players that we think could be there on Sunday, maybe not winning the tournament. And the top 10 picks are, and top 20 as well, but especially the top 10, traditionally one of the more fun bets to play on a wider range of players. And I've got 2 people for you. We'll start it off with Will Zalatoris, who has been one of the incredible stories this year on the PGA Tour. I mean, the guy just places in tournament after tournament over and over again. And keep in mind, he still, I don't believe, has full-time PGA Tour status. He's a Korn Ferry Tour guy that just keeps on winning. And he's now going to be in the Masters. He's going to be in all these tournaments just because of how well he's played. it would be tough for me to look at his number, I believe at 50-1 and expect him to go in and win this tournament. But it's pretty hard to go against Will Zalatoris for being in there in the mix. I mean, he's proven that he's an elite player. He's as consistent right now as anybody on tour. And if we want someone to, make a statement in this tournament saying that, yeah, I belong with all these big hitters and the top guys, to me, I think this is where we get it. Now, I'll be honest, I don't love the number at plus 300, but it just speaks to how good he's been this year. Yeah. And again, I was talking about the difference of, the numbers with Brooks. I mean, if you go to all the other players in the Zalatoris range, 49-1, Hatton, Matsuyama. I mean, Matsuyama won the Masters. Scotty Scheffler, all of them are plus 325, and yet Zalatoris is 3-1. It just goes to show how reliable and consistent Zalatoris has been, and I think that's why the number's a little lower for him on top 10s and top 20s, because he's done it so many times. So I like Zalatoris for a little sprinkle of 3-1. And the other one, and this is going to be very fun to cheer for, is the Hoff himself, Charlie Hoffman. And Hoffman is he's a master of Torrey Pines. I don't know any other way to say it. I mean, look at his finishes in the Farmers Open in the past. I mean, he's always there. Other tournaments in the past. And when you look at the makeup, I will say this: it took in a lot of content over the last couple of days from some of the best names, and a couple of models have come out, have consistently shown Charlie Hoffman first, second, third, among the entire group going into the U.S. Open. So that was all I needed to hear, Pat. Listen, where's Hoff for the outrights too? I mean, as I said, you can't bet everyone, but 79-1, that would be hilarious. Now, I do wish he brought back the long flowing locks like back in the day, but looks a little too businesslike for my liking right now. Charlie Hoffman does, but he's an absolute beauty. Man, can the guy play golf. And he's an off-the-radar name that I think we will be talking about on Sunday. And if you dive into some of the more advanced models and analytics numbers of what is important in this tournament, what he's done in the past, course history, he checks off the boxes. So give me the Hoff at plus 550 to be there on Sunday and finish with a top 10 performance.
I absolutely love it. He's not on my official card for the show, but you better believe when we log off, I'm going to be sprinkling some money on the Hoff. He knows two things. He knows how to play well at Torrey Pines and in Texas, the Valero Open, whatever tournament it seems to be, he dominates Texas. Well, this isn't in Texas, but he is unbelievable at Torrey Pines. You're totally right. And yeah, when you do look at some of the analytical numbers, it's crazy how he just fits perfectly for this course. So if you don't really feel like, going for the long shot there, plus 550 for top 10, I really, really like that value. And before we get into my top 10 picks, going off Will Zalatoris, I feel like he's also kind of just going under the radar right now. Everyone was talking about him, in and around the Masters, the great story. But then he kind of just, faded in, and no one really has been talking about him all that much. And I think,
the funny thing is about that is that you're right. He did take a little bit of time off. He was playing so much because he was trying to stay on tour and have an opportunity to play the next weekend. But the bookmakers aren't sleeping on Zalatoris. Nope. I mean, it's not like he's drifted out to, he's sitting there at the same number as the guy that won the Masters. He's got a Korn Ferry Tour card right now. So listen, the guys that know what's important and what's up, they're not sleeping on him. And as we mentioned, I'd love to see a better number than 3-1 on this. But if we're talking about guys, sometimes you have to ignore the number and bet the guys that you just think are going to perform it and get what you can get. Looking at top 10s, I figured Zalatoris deserves to be in that mix, and I love the 550 on the Hoff for all the reasons that we laid out.
Perfect. So like I said, they're not on my official card, as you can see down here, but I think the Hoff I will be adding, and there's a good chance Big Z, Will the Thrill will be added there. But I went with top 10 Tony as well at plus 210. There's another, instance where, he's going to be in and around the top 5, top 10, plus 210. I like the value there. I think that, I think he can get it done. But I jumped off the bandwagon a little while ago. I'm not going to hop back on just yet, but I will go with a top 10 sprinkle. And another name that hasn't been discussed just yet is Sam Burns. And talk about another guy that had a really impressive stretch, winning a tournament, coming in second. I think he has 3 top 5 finishes as well. And then he had to withdraw from the PGA Championship, and he didn't have a great showing at the Memorial. But I think, the value here for him at plus 650 to come in that top 10, I'm looking at his ceiling. And I think he has an opportunity. If we saw the golf that we played out of him in that 3-4 week stretch where he was in contention tournament after tournament, I really like it. 13 times this season, he's gained 4 or more strokes in a single round. That's tied for most with Xander Schauffele, Bryson DeChambeau, and your guy, the Hoff. So he's in good company there. I really like that. He played well at Torrey Pines. I believe he was in the top 20 earlier this year at the Farmers Insurance Open. So at plus 650, I think earlier this week it was at plus 700. So some people obviously see the value there. So Sam Burns, it's a ceiling play. There's a chance that he might, we'll see more that we saw from the Memorial. But when he's striking the ball well, he has obviously proven that he is one of the up and coming stars of the PGA Tour.
Listen, I love this bet. I sort of, kind of went, oh, geez, how did I kind of overlook Sam Burns in that? Again, we're talking about playing in the top 10, and before he wins majors, he's going to need to contend in a major, and I think he's now ready to do that after the performances he's had in regular tour events, including winning and being right there in another one. And the way he came back and won after that first performance, I think was interesting. Sam Burns, I think now has the confidence that he belongs with these guys and can play with these guys. Now, this is a beast of a golf course. Your round can go south very quickly, and maybe that will happen. But I think compared to the other guys in that mix, he certainly has done enough to give bettors optimism that, he is going to be there challenging for championships and in the mix in a major. And at just about 7-1 on a top 10 bet, I think there's a lot of reason to think that Sam Burns could be the guy.
Absolutely. I feel a lot better about that bet too, Huss. If you're in on it, I think this, we've had some pretty good synergy going on these shows, but I think this is probably the closest to similar cards that we've had. So that's either going to be really good news for us, or come Sunday, we might be putting some more money back into our accounts. Who knows? All right. So now off to the top 20. Huss, who do you like for top 20? I like this pick. This is an off-the-board pick, but I really like it. Yeah, no,
listen, I mean, there's a few other guys that, we could sit here. And, I kind of was looking for something that would pay a little bit more. Because, listen, I mean, we've talked a lot about the guys that are at the top of the leaderboard. I mean, Koepka at even money for top 20, I mean, is sort of a safer bet. I mean, guys like Spieth and even Matsuyama plus 135 to be in the top 20. I mean, there's some value in some of those plays if you want a little safer one to try to ride you through the weekend. But I was looking for some real value and trying, to make your money go a little further. And that's why we're going to Carlos Ortiz. And Ortiz has very quietly over the last couple months turned into a consistent contender on the PGA Tour with like numbers when it comes to ball striking, driving accuracy, as well as, it goes without saying, you need to be sinking a few putts. But under the radar guy that is contended and been in the mix, and you look at leaderboard tournament after tournament, and there's Carlos Ortiz with the top 10, with the top 20. Now, again, this is a huge challenge, going into Torrey Pines. We've talked about this field, but the way that he's playing, the way he's trending going into this tournament, I was quite surprised to see him group with a bunch of players way down at 150-1. Now, that being said, like Stuart Sink's behind him at 199-1. He's got 2 wins on tour this year. You got Bubba Watson, Siwoo Kim, Billy Horschel. I mean, there's some good players in that mix. But when you look at the numbers of Ortiz compared to other guys in that mix are Bubba Watson, Billy Horschel, his top 20 number is a little bit lower again. And this goes back to very much like Will Zalatoris. He has been there so many times that, they kind of cover for that a little bit on that number. Would love to get 4-1 on it, but at plus 375, I think Carlos Ortiz, a nice under the radar name that can, get you almost 4-1 on your money for a top 20 finish.
Again, another pick I absolutely love. I got to put a cap on this because by the end of this show, I'm going to be my board is going to be completely filled. So let's go into my top 20, and I won't go too much on Hovland and Connors. Hovland, obviously, I just saw the number, and obviously I'm on him a few times. I've been on him a lot this year, so plus 105. I just love it at pretty much even money there. Corey Connors, same thing. I have him to win outright, but I also, at plus 215, the guy has just consistently been in that top 20 range throughout. And obviously I mentioned his finishes at majors this year have been impressive as well. But the one I like here is Jason Kokrak. And he's a guy that I almost thought about sprinkling a little bit at his outright price at 74-1. He's coming off a victory at the Charles Schwab. And one thing that I really like about his game recently is he's become a very good scrambler and putter. And that's going to be huge. You mentioned already. You can bomb it as far as you want. You can be a ball striker. But at the end of the day, it's Torrey Pines. You're going to miss a few greens. So if you can scramble well and if you can putt, which out of nowhere, he's become a really, really good putter. And another thing I really like about his game as well, he plays the tough courses well. He has top 10 finishes at Concession, Bay Hill, and TP Sawgrass in this season alone. So obviously he's not afraid of the big courses, the scary courses. He's sneaky, decently long off the tee as well. So another play that I saw some value there as well. And I had to talk myself out of not going for him at 74-1. But for top 20, I like it.
Hey, Kokrak's a great story. I mean, a real easy guy to cheer for. It was amazing to see him win a tournament this year. And often, we've seen guys that, have success and, just continue parlaying. They feel that they belong. They have a breakthrough. And then you start seeing them in the toughest challenges in golf. This U.S. Open certainly, fits that qualification. We'll see whether Kokrak can continue to do his thing. It's just about 2-1 for a top 20 finish.
All right. The moment everyone has been waiting for. It's Hustlers Exotics. No, it's not an adult video
Exotics,
store.
Not erotics, everyone. Get your heads out of the gutter here.
So the Exotics, this is where, I love the top 10s. I love the top 20s, the outrights, but this is where you can get really creative, and especially in a major. Coolbet Canada does an awesome job, really expanding the markets, and you can find some pretty fun bets to bet on. And I think you've got a couple good ones here, Huss.
Yeah, let's get to it. This has been a lot of fun preparing these. Now, I'll start off with Cam Smith. Cam has some interesting props. You can get him to be the top Aussie in the tournament at plus 195. Other guys in the mix for that are, of course, Leishman, Adam Scott, Matt Jones. But I went to the top rest of the world, and there's a big group of the Euros. There's a big group of Americans, and those are the guys that are stacked at the top of the leaderboard. You have to get down to Hideki Matsuyama at 49-1 for the top-ranked player via odds as far as that group. Now, listen, I could give you a lot of reasons why Hideki could very well be there on the weekend. He has been playing amazingly, ball striking, all that, but this goes back to Cam Smith, his performance in majors, the consistency that he's shown this year has, to me, put him in a group of players that are ready to break through the glass and become recognized as, elites around the world. And, these are the guys that won't be in the Ryder Cup. These majors are the huge opportunity for them, not only to make paychecks and set their career up forward, but it is the true measuring stick. And to me, Cam Smith is ready to be that guy that, goes up against a DeChambeau, a Koepka, a DJ, a John Rahm. So, and the odds on this are fascinating. Hideki's 8-1 for top rest of the world player. And then you've got a group with Louis Oosthuizen, Abe Answer, who's been very good this year and quite consistent, and then Cam Smith. Joakim Niemann's another interesting name. I had to keep him off the card. You need to make a decision one way or the other on this. 11-1, I did consider that. And then your guy, Corey Connors, in there at 12 and Mark Leishman at 14. Cam Smith's my guy, though, and I love this number at 10-1. Kind of thought that it would be a little closer to the Matsuyama number at 8-1. So a little bit of good value and another nice sprinkle on Cam. We're not looking at him to win the tournament, but we do think he'll be there on Sunday. We've got him on the top 5. If that catches, there's a very good probability that he'll also be the top rest of the world player. There is number 1. Then we get to the top Canadian, and this is interesting. And we've spent a lot of time talking about Corey Connors. He is clearly the favorite of the Canadians at -139. You got Adam Hadwin at 4-1, Mac Hughes at 5-1, and then a name that will not be on the tip of the tongue of a lot of golfers, but it should, Canadian fans, it should at least, but it should be, and that's Taylor Pendrith. Pendrith has been a machine on the Korn Ferry Tour. I want to say, I don't have this in front of me, but like 29 of 35 cuts made. He's been a money machine, and he's looking to get his PGA Tour card and graduate with the big boys next year on the best tour in the world. But right now, he's qualified for the U.S. Open, and what makes Pendrith such an intriguing player this week is his absolutely dominating length. He is the prototypical bomber. He will be crushing the ball, and that is going to really be important this year. He's still going to have to keep it on the fairway to give him an opportunity to get there. But when he doesn't, he, like DeChambeau and Rahm and some of the brutes at the top of the odds board, have the strength to at least move the ball from these terrible lies that you might get in. So, listen, he's the lowest odds on the board, but I will tell you, Pat, this opened at 7-1. We locked it in yesterday at plus 550. I'm looking now, it's 5-1. He's tied with Mac Hughes. So I think there's a lot of action going in on Taylor Pendrith right now. So especially for you folks north of the border, Canadian fans, remember the name Taylor Pendrith. Make a point of checking out some of his T-balls this weekend. And if you want to have a little fun, a nice long shot for top Canadian, plus 550. Although, as I mentioned, we're moving the lines here, folks. He's now 5-1 on this. The final bet, and this is a hilarious bet. I've never dabbled in the top left-hander before, but I figured it was only right. It was only right that we recognize the greatness that is Phil Mickelson, his win at the PGA, by taking a look at the top lefty odds on this one. Brian Harman, surprisingly, is the favorite at plus 285. Did not expect to see that.
No.
Phil is at 3-1. And Garrick Higo, who won last week on tour, in only his second PGA Tour appearance, made a lot of people money at around 50-1 at the Palmetto, is 3-1. You've got Watson at 4-1 and Bobby Mack, Robert McIntyre at 5-1. I'm going with Phil, partly out of respect for what he's done. But listen, Pat, if he can win the PGA Championship in the fashion that he did, what's to say that we won't be talking about Phil again on Sunday afternoon? I mean, for crying out loud, he is a Southern California guy. He's probably played Torrey Pines more than anybody in the field. And we heard Phil afterwards saying maybe this was just a blip, or maybe I'm going to go on a bit of a run. I mean, it's hard to quantify what that victory means to Phil for this tournament, but I'll tell you what, it certainly doesn't hurt. And we're talking about a group here of top lefty of 5 players. Give me Phil at 3-1. And I know I didn't put it in the picks, but forgive me for a moment just to imagine a Phil victory in the U.S. Open. I talked to Mark Zecchino yesterday on the program. He said if this happens, it would be the greatest victory in the history of the sport. Wow. I mean, listen, the one that he had at the PGA is already historic for a number of reasons, but if he could do it, completing the career Grand Slam, righting the wrong from whatever it was, Oakmont all those years back. I mean, listen, I this would be 89-1. There might be a sprinkle just out of respect for Phil, but I'll tell you what, I do like him at 3-1 to be the top lefty. But as I said, we won't put him on the full card, but you may have to have a little something just to guard against history, because I did say after the PGA, man, I mean, and those numbers were huge. I mean, there was 300s out there, 200s. I mean, no one saw it. You won't get that number as well right now. But again, he did win the last major. There's a lot of reasons to think that if Phil can do anything close to what he did before, and hey, we talked a lot about the scrambling. Is there a better scrambler on the planet than Phil Mickelson? So I think I'm actually convincing myself to maybe up the bet on Phil on the outright, but I'm definitely taking him 3-1 to be the top lefty, Pat.
Absolutely. I mean, you've convinced me. I got to sprinkle a little bit. It doesn't have to be a big number. I'll sprinkle a little bit. But yeah, just even to have him in contention come Sunday, what that would do for golf, what that would do to the Tiger lovers. And I think that would, honestly, it'd be great for golf. And I think Z's right. I think it would be the greatest victory we've seen in golf if he can, complete the career Grand Slam at his age.
Majors over 50.
Majors,
he already was the oldest guy ever to win. He'd do it again with the win at Torrey. It would be so cool. I bet. Listen, it would just be cool to have Phil hanging around on Sunday, just in the mix. Us talking about Phil Mickelson on Sunday afternoon. Whether he can do it, I'm not sure. But it comes back to me, and the more I've heard about the things that are important, you cannot overlook scrambling for the players in this. Everyone's going to have to do it. Phil may be a little more than others, but he does it as well as anyone right now. Yeah. So that's why I'm very high on the top lefty bet at 3-1. And the more I think about it, we may have to give a little more love to old Philip going into Thursday's tee off time.
Absolutely. And I like you said, it's a smart, I think it's a really smart bet with a value there for top lefty. If you don't feel like he has a real chance to be an outright or even to be that top 10, but I love the value there. But before we get into mine, just talking about Pendrith, he's just a little bit north of where I am right now, northwest from Richmond Hill. You talked about his distance. Well, I just pulled up his numbers from the Corn Ferry Tour. He's the fourth longest average off the tee driving distance at 319.9. So on average, 320 off the tee. He's pretty solid. Pretty solid when it comes to putting as well. 31st average putting. He's 6th in birdie average as well. So he's a guy, like you said, he's been dominating the Corn Ferry Tour. So obviously, me being all in on Corey Connors for a couple of bets, I don't love the bet, but from a storyline and from, a true patriotic standpoint, I would love to see Pendrith have a huge tournament. I think that would be great for Canadian golf in an era where I think this is probably one of the best eras we've seen in Canadian golf since our lefty put on the green jacket, many years ago.
But I mean, honestly, Pat,
Sorry,
listen, that was amazing that Mike Weir won the green jacket. It was the historic, win in Canadian golf history. But I mean, there was never a group of Canadians out there contending on tour and creating it. Our boy Derek Ingram here from the PEG, who's been the coach of the Canadian national team, working with the juniors, the Dragon program, still working with Corey Connors. He's at the tournament right now going in. I mean, it's amazing how we develop these young players that are getting opportunities at big NCAA colleges and now moving on to the tour. And Taylor Pendrith is the next one. And obviously there's some parts of his game that need refining, but he's been doing that on the Corn Ferry Tour. And as you mentioned, this guy can pull the driver out and launch missiles. You're averaging 320. What happens when he really lets it out? And everyone will be letting it out at this tournament. Look for, listen, right now, I'd love to see if we could get a prop on, top 10 in driving for the tournament or driving length. I mean, that's maybe we'll have to work on the bookies for the next tournament to get in that. But listen, his length is going to be a key to this. That's why we've seen Pendrith go from 7-1 to 5-1 as we record this right now.
Absolutely. So before we get going here, I'm going to throw out my exotics here, Huss. And Hovland, I'm all in. I think last major show we had, I was pretty heavily invested in him. I am again as well. And this again, I saw some value on the board at plus 650. He's the next choice behind Rahm, and I believe Rahm was plus 250 or something like that. It may have moved since then, but I just saw a ton of value there in Hovland. So sorry, 325 is what Rahm, I'm looking at him right now. So plus 325 for the top European. The very next there is Hovland at plus 650 and Rory at plus 650 as well. So I figured I'd get some value there for Hovland in case he doesn't cash my outright bet. Then this is a little bit of a hedge as well, but I really like this value, and I usually don't really bet anything that's plus, minus 130, 40 at most, but just I saw the value here, and I'll be honest, I'll plug the lock shop here. I heard you guys talking about this yesterday, and it is crazy that this number is not higher. I truly do not get it, because if you look at the outright winners, outside of Rahm, it goes Dustin Johnson, Bryson DeChambeau, Brooks Koepka. Okay, then you have Rory, Schauffele, Morikawa, Spieth, Thomas, Finau. I mean, the list
All
goes on and on.
Americans.
All Americans, even if you go down the board a little bit too, with Patrick Reed, Daniel Berger, Will Zalatoris. There's so many Americans near the top of this board. And at minus 167, I see a ton of value there, because especially when you look at the other options there with Europe or the rest of the world, if the number was a little bit higher, but I think last time I saw it, it was at plus 250 for top European. And I'm assuming because Rahm's such a heavy favorite right now, that's probably bringing that number down. So minus 167, it's a little bit of a juice bagger, but I like it. I'm going to put a couple more units than I normally do, and we'll see what happens there.
Well, Pat, you know what? I gave that one out on Lock Shop, and I'm glad you brought that one up. I was going to mention it at the end just to sort of add in, because it's exactly right. I mean, you've got 8 of the top 10 and 10 of the top 12 right now players by the odds that are, I guess, 10 of 13 under 30-1 that are from the U.S. Yeah. So at minus 161, like that number, I would have expected to be like minus 200, considering 100%. All of that. And again, maybe this is just, John Rahm is the favorite, so they can't make it that high. Listen, it's essentially a bet against Rahm winning. You get the rest of all of the top players at a number that sort of makes sense. So it'll be good. And you know what, man, this has been a lot of fun. And I can tell you, everyone watching this right now, just in the last hour or so, all of the round 1 matchups are out there for it. Yep. We've got first round leader numbers as well, if you want to touch on that for Thursday. So we've got a lot to prepare for, Pat, a little bit time before. And of course, people, if they haven't already, get to Coolbet, get that deposit bonus if you haven't betted with us before. And man, there's a lot of options as we've just gone through to get you ready for what should be an absolutely phenomenal major championship, the U.S. Open at famous Torrey Pines.
Absolutely. I love it. As I mentioned, the Lock Shop, you guys went in deep. Only one episode this week. Dusty hitting the links for a boys weekend.
He's in the U.S. Open. Like. I was going to key for him, but he wanted a pro. So, we'll be back on Tuesday. But
plus we did, a million odds.
Yeah, we did do an extended show yesterday. A lot on the U.S. Open. If this wasn't enough for you, check out the Lock Shop at Lock Shop Bets on Twitter. And definitely, if you haven't, we do it on a weekly basis a couple times. So subscribe on either Apple or Spotify. And we kind of do this sort of thing a couple times a week, hitting the Coolbet lines and getting ready to see where we're throwing our cash down on for the games on the weekend and during the week.
So, Huss, if today with this show and yesterday with the Lock Shop wasn't enough, if people tune in to Winnipeg Sports Talk today, are they going to get any U.S. Open chatter here today or what?
Absolutely. My guy, Reed Fowler, who's doing a lot of really cool stuff on the PGA Tour from a betting side of things, is going to pop by the program. And we'll also talk a little more about the upcoming CFL season. Big Adam Bighill's going to join us. And if you haven't checked out Winnipeg Sports Talk before, just go into YouTube, Winnipeg Sports Talk, hit the subscribe button, join us daily, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 o'clock Central. We record live, and then the podcast is ready for your ride home in and around 3:30. You can find Winnipeg Sports Talk on any of your podcast platforms. And just cranking out the content, Pat. It's a great time to be a sports fan. It's certainly given us a lot to talk about, albeit maybe not a lot of things to do outside of our homes right now, but closer. Yep. And listen, people are optimistic. Now we're able to golf again at least. And who knows, maybe we'll be able to have a few cold ones at a CFL game or something very, very soon. That being said, this weekend doesn't really matter because I think we're going to be stapled to the coach. I believe Z-Man told me TSN has 13 straight hours of coverage each of the first couple days of the tournament. And let's not forget, this is a West Coast venue.
Yes,
so we're going to be getting prime time golf beginning on Thursday. It is going to be great, dude. I can't wait. And man, it's been a lot of fun doing this with you. And And the toughest thing is just making those last decisions because it said we can't bet everyone, but sometimes you want to in events like this.
Absolutely. And the way that I've been betting with Euro 2020, I don't have a lot of money floating around in my account right now. Although the psychic elephant yesterday came out clutch with that France when you can go to my Twitter at PGreggy, check that one out. It was pretty funny. But all right, folks, we are almost at an hour here. Honestly, Huss, I could talk to you for another hour, but I'm going to let you get going. Get ready for Winnipeg Sports Talk. Folks, you can tune into that later today at Winnipeg Sports Talk and on their YouTube channel as well. So once again, that's another major show for Coolbet Canada in the books. I'm Pat Gregoire. He's Andrew Hustler Paterson. As always, we want to remind you, stay cool.